Hi, my name is Henry Brune. I'm here in the auditorium of this great school, Valley View High School. And I was asked a very, very sensitive question of what music means to me and what it's done for me, in my life. To be able to put it in words is that music changed my life and made me who I am today. I was an extrovert when I was in high school, but yet very shy in many other aspects. Now, the one thing that always brought me out of my shell was playing music. And that alone was something that I'd yet to know how to handle it at the time. And little did I know what it would do for me over the years. So I always had this passion for music and I wanted to continue pursuing it. And I did so. The first opportunity I had to play, as long as I closed my eyes, I could play eternally because I had the concern of fear, people, reactions, and things like that. But the more I played, the more confident I became. And it turned me to be the person that I am now. You can't shut me up. I love talking, especially I love talking about music. Music has been my life. It's the pulse that wakes me up in the morning. It's the lull that puts me to bed at night. And I couldn't live without my instrument, I have instruments all over the house and it just becomes an extension of my body. And it speaks. Whatever I don't say in words is being said through whatever sounds I create, out of music. It's the best career I could have ever had. If you take it serious and you apply yourself to it and you invest the time that you need to invest into it, the sky's the limit. You can do what you need to do through music. You can do the speaking, you can project any emotion, anything you want through your music. And believe it or not, when it's a creative aspect happening there, the music is going to happen, it's going to be beautiful. Music is a way to speak to the rest. And when the music is universal, there's no words that can be translated out of music except emotions. Emotions are the ones that control how your body feels. Your body feels what your mind is creating. That creation is tied in with the expression of what you're trying to say through the instrument. Without getting complicated, your instrument is your real voice, and you don't have to say a single word to express everything you have in yourself. If you apply yourself to play and you take it serious enough, you'll be surprised of what the rewards will be. Music is a beautiful career. I would change it for anything in the world. The other aspect of it, I've loved having the opportunity to share with all of you on the educational side. I've been blessed to learn a lot in music, and I love taking what I know and passing it on because that's a gift from above. We need to share what we have because you'll be surprised. If everybody has a little bit of happiness, this world will be 10 times better than what it is today.
This is Dr. Richie Gahate Garcia. I'll be on a podcast for the Valley Percussion Festival. Hi, this is Dr. Richie Gahate Garcia. Letting you know that this Saturday at 10 a.m. I'll be on a podcast for the Valley Percussion Festival with Gilbert Garcia. So if you're around online, please check out the interview. It should be a lot of fun. All right, take care.
Hello, guys. Hello. Hope you are doing great and that your weekend is off to a beautiful, beautiful start. Um, my name's Gilbert Garcia. I'm the director for Valley Percussion Festival. And we are so happy, so excited to be here with you today and to share with you the streams that we have for this week. If you haven't caught some of our clinics in the past, guys, browse through them. I am sure that you're going to find something that you're going to like and that you're going to enjoy and that you're going to learn a lot from. So yes, please go and peruse through it and see what you will like to learn. Guys, what a weekend we have today. Dr. Brad Meyer covering the ATSSB All State Etudes and giving you his insight. His insight, guys, FYI, is always on point. He has done this in the past years and definitely on point with his observations and his tips and his suggestions. Tomorrow, Richie Gajate Garcia, Dr. Richie Gajate Garcia. Um, we've been testing his stream already earlier today, and he is excited to be here. You are going to find out why they call him El Pulpo. And ladies and gentlemen, this guy is touring with some of the best artists in the world. He's touring with Phil Collins. He was telling me, and the reason why he's not is not because he's not with Phil Collins, but because COVID hit and they had to interrupt the tours. So yes, uh, definitely want to catch this tomorrow. But today, we have a guest that is not, we can call him a house guest because he's deeply loved and hold dear, close and dear to our heart. Um, Amazing educator, guys, amazing educator. If you are looking into music education, and Stephen F. Austin is in your sights, and if it isn't, consider it. He is the percussion director there, and you will definitely get an education and then some. Today he will be talking ATSSB Etudes. Without further ado, we have Dr. Brad Meyer. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, I like to say I'm doing flamtastic. How are you doing, Gilbert?
Well, I'm gonna say I'm doing dragtastic. It's
I like it. Look, one more.
yeah, just one more.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, thank you
so
so much for having me on.
it's always a pleasure, sir, and you are considered a house guest. We love you here. We appreciate and hold in high esteem your education that you share with us, sir. Always loaded with gold nuggets and
Well, I'd say the
always
same
looking
thing about
forward to them.
you. So that goes your way too.
Oh, thank you. So today, what can we expect today, Dr. Meyer?
Today we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about the ATSSB Year A etudes that a lot of people are already starting to work on and get prepared for their region, area, and all state auditions that I think are probably about 2 months away for region, and then after that it's game on. So
Yes,
I thought this would be a great clinic to do. I feel like the TMA etudes get a lot of coverage from educators,
yes,
myself included, and which is fantastic. They're great etudes, but I think the ATSSB gets a little bit shortchanged with regards to the information that's out there. And so today
yes,
I'd just like to cover the snare drum, the marimba, and the timpani etudes, and just talk a little bit about little pieces and bits that would hopefully help young as well as senior level percussionists either jump in or keep improving upon these etudes. And so we're going to start with the snare drum etude first. And I actually asked Gilbert if he could use my videos that I've created. I've got some really nice videos that I worked on with Vic Firth, and they're published on their website. And they
yes.
actually include play-along tracks that I play along with that were created by Robbie Green and Alex Tomlinson. Robbie Green's at Klein Collins High School, and Alex Tomlinson is at Cypress Park High School. And they're both
Oh, wow.
fantastic writers of these tracks, as well as fantastic percussion educators. So I wanted to start it off with a little preview of the snare etude with the accompaniment.
Awesome. Let's do that. Nice.
Well, I hope everyone
Nice.
enjoyed that. Like I said, those play along tracks were created for these etudes. They can be found on Vic Firth's website. If you go under the Education tab, go to Browse Topics, then find the 2021/2022 Texas TMEA and ATSSB audition etudes, and you can actually get those etudes play alongs for free. It comes with and without the solo included in the audio track. So you just heard me playing the solo without the actual solo in the audio track. But especially for people that are just starting out and working on this, I really recommend working with the track that actually has the solo part in it, so that you can make sure that you are error detecting, and that if you accidentally learn something wrong, that you can correct it before it kind of gets ingrained. And so that's actually kind of what I want to start out talking with, is some general ideas for learning these etudes. So we've got these videos that you're going to watch me playing, so I don't need to play the whole thing. You can watch them on my YouTube channel or on Vic Firth's till your heart's content. But today we're going to talk about some tips. I wouldn't say tricks, because they're not tricks. They're just tips, helpful ways to improve. And the first one is going to be about practicing and learning these etudes. So my big rule of thumb is, whenever you're starting to learn a solo, whether you're a first-year student or you're 80 years into the career, you want to start learning at half tempo or slower. And obviously that kind of assumes that you're using the metronome as well. So especially like in this etude, it's marked Adagio ma con spirito, with the eighth note equal 132. So if I'm going to do half of that, that's going to be 62 is going to be the eighth note. And a lot of people, especially young students, might say, wow, that's really slow. Absolutely. The point of working slow right from the get-go is to give your brain time to process everything that's on the page, and also process everything that's going on in your sound and in your playing. So start half tempo and then learn the whole thing, and then start jumping it up by 2 or 3 clicks. Small steps. I always talk to my students about stairs. Stairs, we've all been to a football stadium where the stairs are like really tall, and if you're in the band, your marching band, and you're watching people come up, and where that extra large stair is, you see people trip up it all the time. To me, that's a good metaphor for increasing tempo too much when you start learning a piece, as in you've learned it and then you're starting to jump it up. So a lot of people will start, first of all, too fast to begin with. They'll start just a couple clicks slower than the actual tempo. But even if they do start half tempo, they start jumping it up by 10, 20 clicks. And jumping up that much is going to be like trying to jump up a big stair. It's not going to be comfortable. It's going to trip you up. It's going to prevent you from learning it as well as you can, instead of that slow and steady progress. Just like the tortoise and the hare, take it slow in the long run, and you'll get to where you want to go faster than you would if you were, kind of sprinting there and learning with mistakes and lots of errors in your playing. The next thing is a part of that. So when you learn at half tempo, I recommend that you learn it with the dynamics. This is something that I talk a lot about with students. And I talk about why learning with the dynamic is so important from the get-go. First of all, it's the styling of the piece. As young percussionists, and maybe just as young musicians in general, we like to learn the notes and rhythms, and we like to get to the end as quick as possible. Why do we like to do that? Well, it feels like we accomplished something. Getting to the end makes us feel like, hey, I got to the end. I've learned the solo. We love to say that. I learned the solo. Well, you didn't really, because you didn't learn it with the dynamics, which is actually probably in my and a lot of people's opinion, what makes the music actually musical. Just learning notes and rhythms, is not very enjoyable to listen to. But with dynamics, now it starts to become musical. So learn it with dynamics right away. Reason why people think that they can wait on dynamics is they say, I can add them in later, which always leads to poor dynamic execution. Usually later is about 2 or 3 days before their audition, and their instructor goes, wait, you haven't added the dynamics. Well, all of a sudden, you're left adding something new right before an audition, and that's exactly what we don't want to do. We want to be a week or 2 out in front of the audition, playing it just the same way over and over, with hopefully without having to add or change anything. Sometimes you have to change a little something here or there, but we want to try to avoid that, obviously. And then the other reason why people like to avoid the dynamics is because they think it's going to be more to learn. And actually, I would disagree. I always like to use the idea of like the alphabet. Nobody sings the alphabet A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q. It's not, first of all, fun. Secondly, if you're a kid and you're trying to learn that, it's hard to learn. But why do they make it A, B, C, D, E, F, G? They make it a song they make it musical, so it's easier to remember. So if you actually add the dynamics in immediately, you're going to more easily remember what's going on in the music instead of trying to add the dynamics in later and it feeling really forced. It can also help you clarify your dynamics later, which we'll talk about in a moment. Other kind of general universals that we can talk about is watch and listen great quality videos and recordings. You know, I'm not going to try to toot my own horn and say my video is the best. I hope it is, but you might find somebody else or my videos that you really like, and just make sure that they're a really strong player that has worked through the solos, that's hopefully got some years in the field and is trying to play them well so that you have something to study from. Watch those videos once or twice a day as you're working on it. Just by doing that, you're going to start to kind of, I wouldn't say by osmosis, but just through the process of constant listening, you're going to start to ingrain some of those details without actually even trying to work on it, because you're just going to be hearing quality recordings of these solos. Next, take private lessons if you can. And by if you can, I mean, not if it's ultra convenient, not if it's like, well, I guess I got nothing else to do, I'll take private lessons. No, jump in those private lessons. You know, your teachers are doing the best they can, but they probably got to be teaching, 1 dozen to 3 dozen other percussionists at the same time. So you're not getting that one-on-one attention that really benefits you in those private lesson settings. So take with as high a level as you can. If you can take with a college professor, do it. If you can take with, like someone that just graduated, do that. If you're like a middle schooler and you take with a high schooler, do whatever you can. Just find somebody that's more experienced than you, that can give you some information on how you can very personally become better in your music. It costs a little bit of money. I know that's usually a hard thing. It's a little bit of extra time in the week. I know that's a hard thing, especially during marching band season when it seems like you're already in music for gobs and gobs an hour. But get that private lesson action happening. You'll really thank yourself in the long run. I know I did that in middle school and high school, and I didn't do it perfectly. I did some time where I didn't take lessons, and then I remember times that I did. And I can really look back and think about those times when I was taking private lessons. I had things I could work on that really benefited me. And then when I wasn't taking lessons, yes, I was getting better, but it was kind of at a group rate. Next, when you're playing these etudes, you might notice that some of them are marked with a tempo range, 120 to 130 or something like that. Always practice, in my opinion, always practice them at the slower tempo. And I'll tell you why. One phrase: speed kills. And just like in driving, so as it is in music. If you try practicing really fast, well, that's great, and you might be able to do it really well. Well, here's the trick. What happens when we get into an audition situation? Our adrenaline starts pumping, and we just start to want to get it done and get it over with. Well, that's going to lead us to playing it faster, and actually might play it outside the written range of the etude, which if I'm a judge, I am going to be looking for the etude to be played at the tempo that's marked or within the range that's marked. So if you practice it slower, good chance that you're probably going to play it a little faster anyways when it comes to an audition, but at least it won't be ultra fast. And then also by going extra fast, you're allowing more mistakes to most likely come into your playing. So keep it slow, keep it relaxed. And when you get those little butterflies going on, it won't change too much, but it won't be outside the tempo range that's marked either. I already talked about the accompaniment tracks that are available. Make sure you download those. A great way to utilize those is to put them like on your phone, have a set of Bluetooth headphones or AirPods, whatever you want, carry those around, and then download a program called the Amazing Slowdowner to your phone. I think it's somewhere around $8 to $10. I know that's expensive for an app, but it pays for itself. And by that, I mean, it allows you to slow down those accompaniment tracks to the percentage tempo that you want. So instead of using a metronome, you could actually use that practice track and go down to 50%. Now that's not how I recommend learning it. I recommend learning the whole etude and then slowly speeding it up to tempo and then practicing with the practice track. But some people like to work with those practice tracks a little bit earlier on. Either way, whatever works best for you, just make sure that you're not jumping into those practice tracks from day one, almost at tempo, expecting that you'll get a successful practice experience. All right, so you hung with me through kind of my general ideas and tips on just everything that you can do to help yourself on all three of these areas. Now let's talk about the instrument specific. So you heard me play the snare drum track, or the snare drum etude. And so a couple things that I wanted to recommend. First of all, you'll notice I'll be playing on this pad. It's just because it's a little bit easier on the audio, so we're going to use that instead of the drum. But if you see my drum, I've actually got 2 moon gels on it. So I always recommend what I call light dampening on the snare drum. Sometimes just one moon gel works, which is great. But what we don't want to do is put a wallet on there. Don't want to put credit cards on there. Those are really big and bulky, and they actually choke the sound off of the drum. So if we can just put a little bit of light dampening, those moon gels close to the edge, it'll just get out that high ringing overtone sound that we don't particularly care for in a snare drum sound. Next, as we're working on this solo, it's in 12/8. Now, 12/8, you can feel it a lot of different ways. Most commonly, it's felt in 4 groups of 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4, 3. Like those would be whole bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next bar. So that works for a lot of tunes, but this is actually marked pretty slow. 132 for the 8th note is really not that fast. So I recommend counting all 12 beats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2. And if you do that, you're going to be much more successful because some of these rhythms look really fast if you just kind of glance at the paper. We got a lot of 30-second notes and actually even got some dotted 30-second note to 64th note groupings. And those can be a little bit scary. But if you realize that by counting the 8th note, you can kind of do what I call take the rhythms down one notch, as in 8th notes feel like quarter notes. Well, in that case, 30-second notes actually feel like 16th notes, which we're really comfortable with. And then the dotted 30-second notes to 64th notes, they just become dotted 16th notes to 32nd notes. It makes your life a lot easier, and it can kind of take some of the anxiety of this piece out just by flipping your brain and taking down those rhythms kind of one level, as I like to call it. Next, let's talk about roll bass. One of the big things that I talk with my percussionists and percussionists in general about is how do we determine roll bass, especially on the snare drum. And there's no set answer as to what the roll bass has to be, but it actually changes depending on 2 main things, and you could actually say a third, but 2 main things, the tempo and then also the dynamic. So for loud dynamics, we generally want to roll faster. So that would be kind of my roll bass, whatever that is at whatever tempo. For the softer rolls, I would do that. So you can see the soft is much slower than the fast roll. So what do I do in a solo like this? Well, first of all, I'm going to set my metronome. Even before I start practicing the solo, I'll set it to the tempo of the piece, and then I'll just roll a nice smooth roll, and I'll see what rhythm that is in this solo. And so in this solo, that's the 32nd note. So you can listen. If you've got the music in front of you, I'll be referencing measure numbers if that helps you. So if you look at like measure 2, we've got this. And so without my rolls being buzzed, it would sound like this. All right, and then if I want to do kind of an in-between step, which I like to do with my students, I do a tight buzz so that you can still hear the rhythm, but then you can also get that sound of the buzz. And then the last step is just opening it up to that regular, nice, full buzz. All right, so that's how we would determine roll bass. So if you're asking yourself, well, that's great for loud rolls, and if soft rolls, let's say I'm doing like a sextuplet, how would I work that if I'm decrescendoing or crescendoing? And the answer is just pick a point where you think is best in either the crescendo or decrescendo to switch from the one roll bass of the buzz to the other roll bass. So if you're going soft to loud, sextuplets, 32nd. And that would sound like, or vice versa, go soft, loud to soft. I put a little pulse in there, I didn't mean to, but you hopefully get the idea. Next thing is this solo, specifically the solo, starts out forte. Now, a lot of times when I ask students what forte means, I get the answer loud, all right? And that's a lot of times what we're told, but in my opinion, it doesn't mean loud, it means strong. Now, what is strong? Well, strong can be different for different instruments. That's why a clarinet forte isn't quite as loud as a marching bass drum forte. They're two different volumes, but they both represent a forte sound or a strong sound on that instrument. So when we're thinking about forte on a snare drum, that's going to be pretty loud. Now, the trick is we want our dynamics to be in relation to where all the other dynamics are in the piece. So what's the loudest and what's the softest dynamic in this solo? Well, we actually have a fortissimo a little later at measure 9, and then we also have a pianissimo, which is the release at measure 12. So we have this range of fortissimo, forte, mezzo, piano, piano, and pianissimo. So every time I play dynamic, I want to hit that dynamic, and then whatever I play later, and then boom, right back there to that same dynamic. So if I'm playing the beginning like this, or sorry, well, yeah, that might be forte, but what am I going to do when there's a fortissimo? And also, what am I going to do when there's an accent in that fortissimo like there is in measure 9? So I actually bring down the beginning just a little bit so that it's... And then by measure 9, I'm really cranking it out, but I'm also still giving myself a little bit of room so I can make those accents pop out just a little bit more. Next, let's talk about rolls in general. So one of the biggest mistakes that I hear in snare drum rolls, and you're going to hear me say this on probably the other two instruments as well, is that students, and I did this too until my master's, so don't think that I'm doing everything perfect. I'm telling you things that I got wrong that I had to learn to do better. And one of them is putting accents either on the beginning or ends of rolls when they're not marked. So if you look at measure 2, we've got those two rolls. Now, is there an accent on the beginning of those? No. So we don't want to hear. See how I jumped up and lifted into that? That's a really common thing to do. We like to get into that roll with a little bit of gusto, but there's no accent mark. So how do we get rid of that accent? Well, if we look at regular taps versus a roll, they're actually two different heights. If I'm playing forte, you can see my sticks coming up to right about here. Now watch what happens when I roll forte. It's coming up to about half that height. So if I don't want to accent the beginning of the roll, I can't go, because I can't maintain it from that height that it was for the forte roll. So in my mind, rolls are at a lower height than the actual taps of the same dynamics. So I go. See that? And then the next one, which I accidentally just did there because I was having a little fun moment, is releasing with an accent. So we've got that from measure 2 to measure 3. We got 1. It's really common to add an accent there. We don't want to do that. So how it should be performed from measure 2 to 3 is like this. See how it sounds audibly like the same volume, even though my stick heights are changing a little bit between those taps and those rolls. All right, next topic. And by the way, if you have anything that you want to know specifically, drop it in the comments and me and Gilbert will get that answered, because if you've got questions, we want to answer them the best we can. The next thing, choose a sticking and then write it in. So that could be whatever you want. A lot of us use a lead system, usually right-hand lead, even though some people might use left-hand lead. And that can vary, because if we think about right-hand lead, you would actually think that it's the 16th note is every right hand. So this would be. Because later we've got 32nd notes. And so that would be how you could play it. For me, I like to even out the balance between my hands a little bit more than that. I don't like to play a piece with just a ton of right hand lead. There are some orchestral excerpts that's really nice for, but in this situation, I'm thinking as a middle schooler or high schooler, because it's high school that's going to play this, I want to really balance my hands and make sure that I'm not over relying on especially my dominant hand. So I would actually try to play this in the beginning with the 8th note being right hand lead. And so that actually feels really good. And then later around measure 5 and 6, I can use that right hand lead at the 32nd note level. Hopefully that makes sense of what I'm saying there. Another big help is to pulse. And especially if you look at measure 5 and 6, There's a lot of 30-second notes going on, and it's really easy to get lost in there in terms of where the pulse is, because there's a lot of syncopation, a lot of e or one, that kind of stuff. And if you're not counting and thinking through it, it can be hard to feel. And it can also, if you're not pulsing, make it a little bit hard to feel where that releases. So what I do, and I'll play it a little louder so you can hear it, especially over the microphone, in measure 5 and 6, is I'll just lightly pulse, as I like to do throughout a lot of the tune, to be honest, but especially here, so that I can feel where that main pulse is without accenting it. Obviously, I don't want to do that. So measure 5 and 6 kind of sound like this if I just take the dynamic up a little so you can hear it online. And that gets me through those 2 bars. I feel really good. I'm moving, I'm grooving with the music, but I'm also helping myself keep track of where I am in those syncopated figures. Last thing I have is just a little breakdown that I like to do of what I think of as duple to triple or triple to duple rhythms. That's something that a lot of high schoolers and middle schoolers have trouble with, is kind of going from 16th notes to sextuplets and back and forth. And in my mind, this is very similar. Not a lot of people drive stick shift anymore, but if you've had the opportunity to ride with someone or you drive one, you've probably heard the gears grinding when they go, bah, and that's the sign of bad shifting. Well, the same thing. If I'm going 16th notes to sextuplets, but that would hopefully be a good demonstration of it. If I have that kind of grinding in between those shifts between one rhythm to the next, it would sound like this. And so you can hear I'm not quite getting into the right rhythm right away. And so a good way to work on this is, especially for this measure 7 through 9, which has these dotted 32nd note to 64th notes that are also going into 32nd note sextuplets. Now I know that sounds like a lot, but if I slow it down, it really just sounds like this. And you see how when I start pulsing, that was the pulse to the 16th note. It makes it sound really easy, and then I can speed it up. Now, a great way to check that rhythm is to just do what we call filling in the skeleton. So doing the 64th notes and then sextuplet, 32nd notes, and then back and forth. So, sorry, this would be beat 2 of measure 7 if you're curious where I am. Again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Now, I like to put in a right, left, left on those triplets when I'm doing the skeleton, just so that I can really get my ear onto what's going on. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Now, to check the rhythm that's actually on the page, I'm going to just accent the rhythms that are there and bring down to a tap level the notes that aren't. So it'll sound like this. Again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Then I'm going to try to play it without those middle notes, but still trying to hear them in kind of my mind's ear, so that I'm filling in those rhythms correctly and getting that 1, a 2, a 3, a triple at 1 correct, like this. Now, what the big problem that a lot of students have is when they play that 64th note before the sextuplet, they actually turn the 64th note into a sextuplet itself, and it becomes. Hear that? All 4 of those notes were even, which means that 64th note wasn't actually in the right place. It should be just a little bit closer than where a 32nd note sextuplet would be. Sorry, it's hard using all these sextuplet, 32nd, 64th. I'm trying, but my tongue's slipping up on me. So that's a great way to kind of piece apart those tricky duple to triplet rhythms so that you can really get a good listen in your mind's ear for what those should sound like. Now, Gilbert, are there any questions that we have so far, or anything that you would like to talk about for a second here?
No, I haven't seen any questions. I have seen a lot of viewers coming in and checking it out. My question is more of general, because being an educator and have done this throughout the years, the stuff that you're giving out, sir, is applicable 110% to any etude, or
Yeah.
any year that you're gonna learn a snare etude, right? It's definitely on point. My questions were, um, how would you, um, you know, make your buzz roll or your concert roll? I know there's different terms out there. How would you make it better? How would you develop it to get
That's a
that nice concert roll quality?
That's a great question. So one of the things that I work on a lot with my students is talking about the three things that you can change in a concert snare roll. I'll probably use the snare drum just so that we can actually hear what those are. So the first thing is really simple. It's just right to left hand balance, as in, is one hand louder than the other? So if you hear something like this, you know that that right hand is, hopefully you're listening, you're not just looking, but you could also see by the heights that right hand was louder. So then to fix that, I like to think about my hands as being kind of like a dimmer switch, or if you're an audio person, think about them as sliders on a mixer board. I'm going to slowly move them around until I hear and see, hopefully they're hear and see at the same time, that they're the same. So let me demonstrate that. So hopefully by the end of that roll, you heard a pretty smooth and consistent hand-to-hand relationship. So that's the first thing. That should be the very easiest thing to catch in terms of what's good or not great about a roll. The next two things are kind of part and parcel with each other. And that is going to be the granularity of the roll, as in how many buzzes per stroke. So either a few or a lot. So that's the first thing. The second thing that goes hand in hand with that is how fast that buzz roll rhythm is, or how fast my skeleton rhythm of my roll is. So a fast skeleton would look like the first thing that I'll show you, and then a slow skeleton will look like the second. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our ear as our primary detector on this one, and we're going to work on something like a good mezzo forte roll. And what we're going to find is that louder rolls, things like mezzo forte and forte, have a faster roll base or faster roll rhythm, whatever you'd like to call it, but they actually get about 3 to 4 of those bounces, or 3 to 4 grains per hand stroke. And that's because louder rolls, we don't want to go ba da 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 da, because all those last 7 or 8 bounces are really low and soft, and they're going to be hard to connect to the other hand that's starting ba da 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 with those big loud ones. So we want those first 3 or 4 bounces so that it's a nice full sound with very little kind of soft buzz bounces in there. And it's going to sound, probably to a young percussionist, it sounds a little grainier than they'd like, but you actually get used to it because you hear it more as a solid sound rather than trying to crush as many buzzes as you can. So I'll play it first, hopefully decently, with a nice fast arm pump, a few less grains per bounce, and you'll hear it. And then I'm going to try pressing in a little bit more, which is what I really commonly hear young percussionists make this mistake of doing. So here's the good one. And here's one that's been overpressed. Hopefully what you can hear on that second one is the hand-to-hand is very obvious. In the first one, it's a little bit more grainy, but hopefully you're not hearing that distinct hand-to-hand quality on them. And then for soft rolls, we just flip it. So now we're going to get more of those soft bounces. So we're going to get 7 to 10 bounces per hand, but our arm rhythm, our buzz rhythm, is going to be slower. So fast rhythm would be about that speed. Soft rhythm would be about that speed. And so now I'm going to use these long buzzes along with that slow roll speed to create hopefully a nice smooth roll. All right, and so the big trick with rolls is spend time with them. You know, if you don't know, if you're a percussionist, you can really think about these as long tones for brass players. If you hear your brass and woodwind friends and they just hold a long tone, one note for an entire breath, they're working on their long tones. And what they're working on is the control of that one single sound, trying to not let it waver and wiggle as much as possible. We do the same thing with our buzzes. So what I tell my students to do is set a timer, practice your buzz rolls for something like 15 to 20 seconds, then take like 10 seconds off. 15 to 20 seconds on, then 10 seconds off. Now, if you're going to do the same thing with your loud rolls, which you should, they're a little bit more tiring. I would say practice them for 7 or 8 seconds and then take about 10 seconds off. They're a little bit more aggressive. They're a little bit more physical, and we don't want to ruin our hands. We don't just want to keep rolling forever. But if you do those and you just spend time with it and you use your ears, also you can use your eyes to watch your hand to hand, you're going to get a lot better in a very short amount of time. Set a timer for about 10 minutes, do your soft rolls, set it for another 6 or 7, do your loud rolls. I guarantee in 3 weeks' time, your rolls will be 4 times as good as they used to be. I can't hear you, Gilbert.
Another question following up on that, sir. What's your scoop on the, and I hate using this term because it conveys the idea that there's tension going on, but there isn't. Uh, your grip pressure or in a roll.
Yeah.
What's your scoop on it?
Yeah, and I'll come up a little closer to the camera so you can see a little better. So what I think about with grip pressure is, first of all, it's going to be more up the stick. If you think about how a stick bounces, the less you add, the better it's going to bounce. Now, that was just my thumb and first finger. Now, if I add on like my back fingers lightly, it sounds like this. So you can see with the back fingers, a lot of times we as instructors say they're for control. And I actually like to modify that and say they're not just for control, they're reducing rebound. That's why when you're playing an exercise like bucks, you have that back of the hand and you're squeezing tightly after those accents to get the stick back down. So what we find is those back fingers generally reduce rebound. Well, in buzz rolls, we want as much rebound as possible to keep those rolls nice and smooth. So I recommend, and I actually hold the stick with my thumb and first 2 fingers like this. And then I'm just doing a light pinch up front and I'm getting my back fingers. I like to think of them, they're not away like this. Sorry, I'm doing it over exaggerated. If I actually showed you, it looks like that, where it's just not touching, but it's also not flying away. Because I do see lots of young students rolling like this. And the bad part is, while that does get your fingers away, they're not close by so that if I have something technical right after the roll, then I'm ready for it. So instead, I like to keep those back fingers off it, but just really close. That way it can bounce in the middle of the hand without being disrupted. And then the fingers are close by so that they can be activated if I need them to.
Awesome. And the other issue you covered it. The ideas that came to my mind were the check patterns that you would use from going from duple to triple, which I think are great. You know, first you do the full skeleton. This is how it feels shifting, and then you isolate and put taps and just bring out the rhythms. That's beautiful. Yes.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, and those I didn't make up. If you're a young student watching, those are things that you'll hear brass players do, woodwind players do. You know, just filling in the rhythm so that you can really feel those missing notes that you don't play when it comes time to actually perform it. So a lot of the stuff that we talk about here are going to be universal concepts, like Gilbert said, that you can apply to, you know, entry level middle school solo all the way to the most professional hard ramma jamma solo you can imagine. At the end of the day, it's all the same practice. It's just faster and slower and more technical, but it's the ideas, the concepts are actually pretty universal.
Exactly. You can literally take them and copy paste, or you know, think of them as like plugins. they'll instantly work, or they'll help you fix things. Yeah, I was gonna ask you something, but I it slipped my mind. Um,
Okay,
yeah,
let's move on to
go ahead,
mallets.
sir.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome.
and you wanna play the mallet etude for me?
Yes, sir. Here we go.
All right.
There we
Yay!
go. Yeah,
It's so much more fun watching myself play it. Um,
yeah.
so I
It-
wanted to mention, by the way, for snare drum sticks, I was using the Vic Firth's new symphonic collection, the Nisly Nissly stick. They're a great stick. Highly recommend them. Check out some of those new symphonic series if you want. And also for the mallet etude, I use the Robert Van Sice. This is what they call the monotonal series, the dark gray if you can't see it. And this is
oh
the
yes, yes.
M114. I really like that for this etude. It's a pretty articulate mallet, really nice for some of these faster 16th note passages, not too heavy. I also sometimes will flip and I'll go one shade softer if I kind of get in the mood. The 113 is also a nice mallet. So if you have one of those two different sets, they're both great on this particular etude.
Awesome, awesome. Sir, the question that I was going to ask you was regarding to the sticks. You helped me remember. Um,
Perfect.
why that stick? Why that bead? Because it's a round bead, perfectly round.
Yeah, honestly, I've been playing with the Tom Geiger or Gauger or Geiger or I've
Yeah.
heard it pronounced it a lot of different ways, but I've been playing with his TG15 for a long time. But Vic Firth doesn't make that anymore, and since I do a lot of videos for them, I like to use stuff that's in stock. So I've tried out all the symphonic collection. It's really nice. They've got a really cool kind of Scheherazade movement 3 stick in there that's kind of like the bolero stick with a really small.
Yes, yes,
I really liked these because they have a really nice feel to them. They're a little heavier than the TG15s, but not a ton. The tip, like you said, is a pretty round tip. It's got a little bit of a flat spot to it, so it does give you a little bit more beefiness. And as I am playing some of these high school etudes, they're not super duper fast. So I like the
yeah,
drum have just a little bit more depth and volume and tone to it. For faster stuff, I do like those Ne Rosaros or the TG15s that have a slightly smaller bead. The Ne Rosaros have a longer, I forget if it's like a barrel or kind of like a smooth barrel
yes,
shape, but it's got a longer taper. I really like those for the Tompkins, French American solos and things like that. But this is just a nice, big, beefy, feels good in the hand, full sounding stick that's not too heavy, like a marching stick, obviously, but it's not
yes,
so light that, especially if you get nervous, it really helps your rolls kind of smooth out a little bit more. So that's why I like
yes,
them. They also have a really neat back end to them where it kind of rounds off a little. I don't know, it just feels good in my hand. And that's really the trick
yes,
to fix is you just find the thing that works best for you. All of our hands are different. There's about 10,000
yes,
snare drum sticks on the market. Just try some. Go to PASIC, go to Midwest, go to TMEA, and try them out. Sticks are the cheapest things that we purchase. I know that they don't cost nothing, but it's really nice when you find that set that feels good in your hands. You've done
yes.
something special that gives you that extra confidence.
Yes, yes, yes. And the fact that they're a bit on the heavy side, it helps you feel comfortable at the low end whenever you have to play in the lower dynamic range.
Absolutely. I like them for that exact reason too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
So we'll move a little bit quicker through the mallet and the timpani. A lot of the things that we talked about can be used in the same fashion from snare drum to these two instruments, but I did want to talk about a couple quick pointers and tips. The first is memorize this solo. If you're using the page, you're using your eyes to look at the paper instead of where you're playing. And to me, that's wasted, not energy, but that's just wasted benefit in your favor. So if you're using your eyes to help you play, and you can look at notes and you can kind of get your eyes set, because what you find, the more and more you play mallets, the more it's about, especially for mallets, what can you use your eyes to kind of move from and off of. And we're going to talk a second about an exercise that specifically touches on that. Next thing, obviously practice it at half tempo or slower, which is going to be 60 BPM for the quarter note. And then use the written stickings. There are a lot of great stickings in here. I do a couple different stickings, or I've added a couple, I should say, that aren't in there. I really haven't changed any, I don't think, that are in the original, but I have added a couple double rights, a couple lefts, double lefts to make my life a little easier. If you want to know exactly where those are, you can watch the video. And by the way, all YouTubes can be slowed down. Just go in that little gear settings in the bottom right corner, and you can pick the playback tempo. So you can practice with your videos, your favorite artists from day one who have played these solos. Next thing.
FYI, sir,
Yep.
FYI, I put all the links to your 3 videos on the comments so they can find them.
You the man. I love it. The next thing is this tune only has one written dynamic. It's marked mezzo forte at the beginning, and then you're not giving any other dynamic. So a lot of times I get asked by people, should I add my own dynamics in? And there's no right answer, because that can be a very large scale of what that means. But in the beginning, I always say to students, learn the solo as it's written. But here we have mezzo forte only, so I kind of don't even count that as a real dynamic, because to me, mezzo forte, I often call that mezzo boring. Why just play it mezzo boring? So, even from the get-go, start trying to figure out what you're going to do musically. And if you're confused or you don't know where to start, you can do the kind of like musicality 101, which is as you go down the instrument, get softer as you go up. And that would sound like this. Like you're just falling up and down. That gets a little bit obnoxious, to be honest. So what you want to do is go in and try to find longer phrases where you can kind of go to maybe 2 or 3 bars up and then 2 or 3 bars down, or vice versa, so that you you hear that. That's a 4-bar phrase, and it goes by quickly. It's a fast tune, but it goes somewhere and it has direction. So if you want to, and I'd encourage it, start working on musicality right from the get-go. It makes the music actually a lot more enjoyable to practice. Now here's the kicker. You need to add musicality at some point. And by some point, I would say at least halfway between when you start learning it and the audition, hoping that you're starting it in the next couple of weeks and the audition's in 2 months, so that you at least have a month of learning it. And then by then, a month, you're at least adding musicality then, so that you have another month to kind of perfect that musicality, as well as also get everything else perfected. But definitely add musicality into solos, because at the end of the day, you're probably going to miss a note or two. I miss a note or two. It's okay. But I would rather breathe life into my music by giving it shape and direction, rather than trying to play it like a robot so that I can win first chair or whatever. Because to be honest, only one person's going to win the first chair. Only so many people get into Allstate, so many get into area, and just life's too short to play music robotically. So start from day one, breathing that life, breathing yourself into the music by shaping it, finding direction, and you're going to enjoy playing much better. And you know what? You still might miss a note, but hey, at least you had fun. At least you're creating a musical product doing it. Next thing, I always recommend on this solo to use all centers. It is a little bit more work reaching back and forth, but it gets you a more consistent tone, because as we know, edges don't sound quite like the centers on the naturals. And also it gets you used to that, so that when you're playing fast, which this does have some moderately fast sections, you're used to reaching out in the centers. I find that students, once things get moderate, they start using the edges and they sacrifice that tone quality on the instrument. I would say just work a little bit more now so that you get more comfortable playing on the centers, so that way later down the road, as you play different solos, you're not afraid to use those in more challenging areas. And then when you really need to, obviously use those edges when you just really have to. There's no problem with that, but it is great to not sacrifice the tone quality that the edge makes you sacrifice. Next, don't accent beginnings of rolls like You can see down on like measure 32, we've got this. I hear a lot of people accent that. Connect those rolls. There's no accented rolls. There's actually no accents in this solo at all. So you can really have fun shaping it. But watch out for anytime you really smack a note. You want to lay off that and just create shapes. Don't create points. That's a nice maybe rule of thumb to think about. Also, this section has 3 times that the initial statement, the initial theme is brought about. Obviously, in measure 1, we've got, and then if you go down to the bottom of the page, at measure 33, we've got that again. And then finally, at the very last line, the very last page, measure 45, we have it one more time. It's very common or easy to let your brain wander and to actually skip or repeat one of those sections because that same figure comes about. So just make sure you kind of use that as a roadmap. You can even in your brain say like beginning, and then 2, and then 3, so that you're kind of in your head, obviously not out loud. That can help you keep the form of the piece and avoid any of those kind of big errors of repeating or missing a section. Now let's talk about 2 quick exercises that we can work on that will help us with some specific spots in this section. The first one is going to be this measure 21 and 22 section. So we've got, and as you can see, I'm kind of focused on, and my left hand has to jump down to this low A 4 times in a row. And that's a kind of a significant jump in this kind of quick little quasi-arpeggiated figure. And so we can work on that through what's called spatial awareness exercises, or muscle memory, if you like to think of that. There's lots of ways that you can call it, but the idea of not having to look, but reaching out and knowing what note you're going to hit. And so a lot of us have heard or played in marching band, if we're in a pit, an exercise like this. Yes, I missed a couple notes. Sorry, just kind of running through. But you get the idea. And what you see is hopefully you see me looking at that center D that I was on and not looking like a cat looking at a laser pointer back and forth. Instead, I'm using my direct vision to look where all the most of the notes are happening, but I'm using my peripheral vision as well as my muscle memory. And I think it's Gordon Stout that actually has a book called Idiokinetics, which is a great book. It actually is basically the idea of this spatial awareness and what it was created on. And the idiokinetics is just a fancy term for muscle memory, knowing that if I go here and then I go here, that's going to be an octave, all right? And so the trick with that is learning how to move consistently. Now, what we don't want to do is windshield wipers. We don't want to go rolling the hand back and forth like this. That's bad. You don't create muscle memory that way. The way we create muscle memory is through big muscle groups. So when you saw me playing, especially those octaves, you saw me using my whole arm, especially my shoulder. And what I can really do is feel that, and kind of my brain, obviously, but I feel that movement. And I've practiced that enough to know that that's going to be an octave, or hopefully it's going to be an octave. If not, it's going to be pretty darn close. And so work on that by doing a couple of variations of basically the same exercise. You can just do this with one hand where you stare at that one note, and it can be any note, by the way. You can go chromatically, you can go in any scale you want, doesn't matter, but stare at the first note and then use your peripheral and your arm muscle memory to try to play the rest. So and if you miss one, stay on it. So I just missed the octave twice. So I want to work on that one. I know when I get to that interval, my brain, my arm, whatever, is not feeling it well. Then you can add the other hand in and just do a motor rhythm, just filling in that note. Really the same idea. And then you can do it with the right hand. And then if you want to get both hands working, you can either do it in like a triplet fashion. Or if you really want to get fancy, you could do it as double stops. And you could use two different notes. You could use like two notes. So on and so on. And what this helps is as you play that moment, you can really start to feel that left hand coming back to that A and being as consistent as possible without having to constantly shift your eyes, which will probably in the long run make you play the top notes worse as well, and probably miss the bottom note as well. So that's a nice little exercise for that moment. The next moment is going to be measure 29 and 30. So here we've got what I think of this as 4-note pattern. And that arpeggiation is pretty tricky. It goes from some accidentals and naturals and also goes down pretty quickly. So work an exercise, and what I would recommend is just take that actual lick and do like a doubling or quadrupling of it. So play each pattern 4 times. And then do it twice. And then do it once. And that's a really challenging moment. You might try to put in a sticking or something there, but you're probably going to make your life a lot harder if you do. It's really nice just to have that alternating movement in your hands. If any of you know the Porgy and Bess, that's why people use the alternating pattern for that and not the... Kind of helps them create a little bit more of a consistent sound. But you do have to, move your arms around and make sure that as you cross under, which is not really cross under, you're just not moving yet as your other mouth's moving, that you hit that G instead of hitting hitting something like that F right there. That's a really common mistake in that arpeggiation, allowing one hand to drag the other away from the note it's really supposed to be hitting. So that's all I've got for the mallet etude. Gilbert, do you got any questions or any questions online?
I noticed that you touched upon the two of the trickiest sections that are going to cause, probably some wrong notes, and unfortunately, that's what judges will look for, right? The wrong notes. But I noticed that those two exercises that you shared are great to clear or to develop the accuracy as you're playing them at tempo. Now, what general concepts do you have in for accuracy, for note accuracy in mallets?
Yeah, I mean, the general concepts, I guess to simplify that question would be how do I not miss notes? And
Yes.
that's kind of like the trick of like, any sport. Like, how do I become a better archer? How do I become a better runner? And it's just going to be a lot of time at the instrument and taking things slow, being mindful, thinking through what you're doing, not just playing it and going. Like I hear high schoolers do that. They jump in the band room for 5 minutes between lunch and something. Like, oh, I got to get a little practicing on my etude, and they play it really quick and sloppy. And what you just did is you added errors into your brain instead of taking it slow. And really, something that I like to do, like I said, take it slow. If I have a concert, even as a professional, I'm like years old, and I still, the day of a concert, will practice my solos well under tempo the first time. Then I practice it a little under tempo the second time. and then I'll actually get to full at tempo runs of my.
Yes.
And the whole reason is because if you spend, let's say, 3 months working up a recital or 3 months working on this piece, and in the first 2 weeks, you get this solo learned in at tempo, and then you just keep playing it at tempo. Well, first of all, you're just going to be playing through it to play through it. You're just going to be trying to make
Yes.
yourself feel better, basically. Secondly, you're not going to be noticing anything that's going wrong. You're going to miss a note, but you're going to not think about it because you're going through it just to get through it. And you're not going to go, wait, I've missed that note, 8 times out of the past 10. Even though it's maybe 10 days that I played it over because I only played it once between classes. You really need to sit down not sit down, stand up, obviously, but you need to set yourself in a place and really try to be analytical of your playing and in a kind way to yourself. Is not to beat yourself up and say, gosh darn it, I missed that note 8 times out of 10. It's to say, okay, I've got a common problem. How am I going to fix it? And one way is to slow the section down with the metronome, play it right, and then just gradually speed it up in those small stair-step increments. Another way could be to create an exercise that works that little moment or that little concept of that moment
Yes.
that you're struggling with. And then once you get it to tempo, you can do what they say is like the 10 penny trick or 5 penny trick. You put 5 pennies over here on the end of your board, and let's say you play it perfect once, you put it over here. You play it perfect again, you put it over here. You play it wrong, you got to take a penny and go back. And then finally, you're done with your practice session once all 5 of those pennies are over here. And you don't have to do that for just at tempo. You could do that and say, okay, I've got 30 days till the audition, so I'm going to bump this etude down 30 clicks, and every day I'm going to do that 1 click faster. You don't have to bite off more than you can chew and try to do it at tempo. And like basically that you're never going to do that. It's doing that right away. It's just going to be bad.
Yeah.
So try to find those smaller goals that can lead you to that ultimate goal of playing it.
Smaller goals. Yes, I like that.
The way you want to play it at the audition or at the performance.
Yes. Yes, I like that. Smaller goals. I love that approach.
Awesome. Want to hit some timpani?
Yes, let's do that. I play it.
Kick it, DJ Garcia.
Here we go.
That's always a fun play along because it's got that distorted guitar in there that I really like.
Yes, yes, and I notice it does two. Well, it does more than that, more than two. One, the tempo's there, the pulse is there, so they internalize it, but it's in music form. So now they feel a groove to it. They're gonna by nature they're gonna put flow into their strokes, which is gonna make it fluid. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why Robbie Green and Alex Thomason were making these a few years at least before I talked them into doing them for me, and because they were already doing it. And what I loved about them is that I love when my solo feels like it's a part of a bigger work. Like I can think of my timpani as a part of an orchestra, or I can think of my drum set playing as a part of a band, or that the same thing applies for any instrument, in any genre. If you could hear your marimba part, if you're a pit player and you hear the whole marching band, you hear the whole drum corps while you're playing, or you hear the drum line in your head while you're playing, it's going to be so much more enjoyable because now you're part of a bigger project. And even if like these are solos, and even if without those play along tracks, I would still try to hear them as something bigger than just 3 drum solo. I would try to hear it.
Yes.
You hear the play along. The great thing, and maybe the play alongs force us to not have an imagination, but at the same time, I
Yeah.
think it's just really fun to play with. And I play these probably longer than any other Texas student does because I actually started these 3 years ago, so I've been playing them since then. So these
Oh,
plays
wow.
really make it a lot more enjoyable.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
So you learned all the set completely of ATS's B Etudes?
Yeah, you'll notice in the Vic Firth recordings, I'm wearing all the same clothes and same lighting and same drum placements and everything. I recorded those all 3 summers ago and just did them all in one big swoop. So just a
Oh,
fun little
wow.
recording project.
Wow. Fun.
Yeah. Fun's the word I use most of the time. There were a couple of moments where I probably wouldn't have used the word fun, but when I missed a note and I almost finished the etude, I might have had a different word than fun, but I think generally it was fun.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's
Yes.
all. That's recording.
I always tell my family that they'll see me, go hard for a competition, and they'll see me, we'll go to compete, right, and then we'll come back, and the look in my face is like, I'm not gonna do that anymore, but we know you are.
Yeah. It's love hate. You love it, but there's a moment where it's like, gosh darn it, but then you love it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let me
Okay.
talk about some timpani now. So the first thing is I use these Tim Genis GEN7s. They're the articulates. And what I really recommend is whatever stick, I'm a Vic Firth artist, so I'm going to recommend Vic Firth sticks. But whatever stick you use, make sure that, first of all, it sounds great. And one of the big things in terms of sound on timpani that I hear mistakes being made is people will use a really hard ultra staccato mallet. And it sounds really harsh to the ear. There's not a lot of tone being produced. And if you don't know what I mean, it's basically the same felt that you get on a marching bass drum mallet. It's that kind of felt. And it's just really hard. It has no warmth to it or very little warmth. And so what I do is I like this nice full cotton mallet, but still a little bit articulate because this does have some soft, fast passages like you'll see later in the solo. Also, I want to take just a moment because I didn't do it at the beginning to thank Vic Firth, Zildjian, Evans Drum Heads, Tycoon Percussion, and Yamaha Instruments. Those are my sponsors. They do so much for me, so I wanted to give them a shout out. All right, so let's talk about this timpani solo because I don't want to take up too much more time. Hopefully there's still some people hanging in there with us. But this solo is in 12/8 like the snare solo was. However, this one can be felt in a big 4. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. And so feeling it like that. Next, don't overplay. One of the biggest problems that I hear timpanists have is that, these are big instruments. They're much bigger than a snare drum. They're much bigger than a marimba bar. So all of a sudden in our head, we get, oh man, these are big instruments. I can really, we've all seen that kind of like George of the Jungle or Spaceballs moment where they're playing like this. And really, that's not how we play timpani. They're not just these gigantic drums that we whack on. These are, in my opinion, one of our most tone-producing oriented instruments in percussion. And so that's why there's so many timpani mounts. That's why there's so many different techniques on lift that we're going to talk about in a second. But, this solo starts out at forte, but there's fortissimos later. So if I'm playing forte, you see how I'm not making a huge sound. I'm not making a gigantic playing, because if I play too hard, you'll actually hear the drum distort, and you'll get this bow sound. I tell my students it's like a dog barking. You'll go bow, bow, and you'll actually hear the pitch descend a little, and you'll hear like this distorted gang sound. It sounds very nasally. And I'll do it just for a moment. I don't like doing it very much, but you should hear it. So on the recording, it probably sounds pretty slappy, and that's bad. We don't want that. We want that nice, warm, full sound with still just a little bit of articulation that we're getting from the mallets. Next, lift. So I have 2 metaphors for lifting on timpani. So by lift, I mean coming off the drum. Timpani, if you can think more about coming off the drum, then anything else, you're going to be getting yourself on a great track to have a nice tone on the instrument. So I have two analogies. The first one is the hot stove analogy. So if you've ever accidentally touched a hot stove, you know that it looks something like this. And so what that is more lift than down. So the down's here, but the lift's there. Now that's obviously going to be over exaggerated for the stroke, but it's that same concept. We're going to start here. We're going to try to get off. Sorry, I want to make sure you can hear me. We're going to try to get off the drum so that we get more tone. It opens it up. There are a lot of things that people say, like the mallet's like absorbing the sound. Another one is about how long the mallet is on the head, dampening overtones. And I think they've all got a little credence, but I think it's the culmination of all those things together that really is what affects the sound. It's not one little thing. It's a lot of different things that that stroke has. So when we do a downstroke versus an upstroke or lift stroke, we're really changing the tone a lot. Hopefully you can hear that over the internet. So the other way that I like to think about it is flicking. Now, if you've ever like flicked your best friend, you know that when you flick them, you go like this, and then your hand comes off, right? That flicking. Now, don't do this to anyone. I'm not telling you to do that, but we've all probably done it to our best friend and tease them a little. But that flicking is the same thing that you can think of that mallet head. Boom. We're flicking off the drum. And that's a great way to work on that lifted approach that timpani really need to maximally produce the tone that we want. Next, a couple different things. Don't accent beginnings of rolls, just like we've talked about before. So like measure 1 and measure 2. You see how I start and I end those rolls at the same height, the same volume. There's no accent. Yes, there is a release on those notes, but it's not an accented release. Bad. So don't accent unless there's an accent marked, which there actually isn't any there aren't any accents in the solo. Dampening. This is a big point of contention among a lot of people, so I'm not going to get in it too much. I'm just going to give you my thoughts, and if they're different from your instructors, do what your instructor says. So with dampening, I tend to think less is more. So I don't want to be doing a lot of it's just too much work, and it causes more issues, more tone errors, more playing errors than doing less. And so for me, I think about dampening as the idea of clarity. What moments need the clarity that dampening would benefit from? And I don't think, like I just showed you, that provided clarity. That actually provided a lot of different issues that we're going to talk about in a moment. So dampening should, in my opinion, only happen 2 places. Measure 10 to 11. So we've got this. We've got this really loud fortissimo moment that goes to a subito piano moment. And without a dampening, you're really not going to hear those first couple of notes that are at piano. And you can see I don't muffle, but one drum. I dampen that middle drum, which is the B flat. And then the last dampening or cluster of dampenings I do is at the very last bar where we have. And so I do that because, first of all, this piece ends on a quarter note and 8th note rest, or dotted quarter note rest. And so we need to cut off our sound at that time. Just like an ensemble, we wouldn't want to be ringing over into the rest when nobody else is playing. So how I do that is I do one dampen, bum, 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 bum. As I hit the top E flat, I dampen out the B flat so that, there's still that F that's ringing, but I played that a long time ago in relation to the B flat, and the E flat's ringing up top. And then on the next big beat, beat 4 of the bar, I dampen both of the outer drums so that hopefully all 3 are completely quiet so that you get this. Now, a couple things about dampening. First of all, dampening should remove sound. It shouldn't add sound. So I'll give you two things that I see that's really common in young percussionists that you should avoid. The first is the wipe. I've seen that so many times. If I had $1 for each time, I'd be a millionaire. And I don't know why that is, to be honest. There's just something about this that makes us feel like we're canceling out the sound. But if you listen, what do you hear? You hear me scratching or sweeping my fingers across the drum. So I'm actually not just reducing or eliminating the ring. I'm actually creating sound that I don't want. I'm creating unintended sound. So instead, I don't want to do that. I want to go and put my back 3 fingers. Let me do it against my shirt so you can see. I hold on to the stick with my thumb and first finger, and I dampen with my back 3 fingers, and just the very front pads of my fingers, not the whole like finger itself, not the palm. I just do those 3 fingers, and I actually place those fingers right where I just played. The other trick is to not slam your fingers down. So not to go. I don't want to hear the dampen, just like I didn't want to hear the dampen that way. So when I dampen, I want to get the fingers close to the drum and then just lightly drop them onto the drum. I don't want to push in real hard. I don't want to slap them down. I just want. And you know what? You might hear a tiny little buzz of the fingers every now and then. It's not the end of the world, but it's much better than or. So work on your dampenings and try to make sure that you get any extraneous noise as removed as possible from that. Next, second to last thing, and then we're almost out of here. I really recommend people avoid crossovers. This etude has quite a few crossovers marked in or crossovers implied in it, and really I don't think that they're necessary. So crossover would obviously mean my wrist is crossing over the other wrist. There's a lot of issues that crossovers can cause in terms of maybe this hand accidentally accenting, maybe the hand underneath being too light because it's trying to stay under. There's just lots of errors that happen. And tenor players know all about it. They spend all season working on their crossovers, trying to make sure that none of those tone and volume and playing errors come in. So if you have great crossovers, great, but I'd still recommend to avoid them. Instead, I would really focus on the idea of what I call, and a lot of people call, shifting. So if I'm going to move, just quickly keeping the hands still separated and moving quickly over rather than trying to go over and then under and then out. That creates a lot of issues, a lot of sweeping, a lot of adjacent motions where you're slicing into the drum versus moving around and just slightly shifting those hands with your shoulders and your elbows over a little bit quicker. You can see that a lot. Like if I play the last line for you, we go up and down the drums a lot, and you'll never see me cross over. See how I avoided all those crossovers that a lot of people might put in there. If you do put in crossovers, use your ears, use your eyes, make sure that the sound is not being too low or too loud compared to the notes around it. Lastly, measure 12. This is probably the hardest measure. You can also probably think measure 7's a little challenging. Yes, it has some 16th notes. Check out my recording to watch my stickings on that. But I really think measure 12 is kind of the make or break section for clarity because it's piano. It moves around quickly. And there's a couple stickings that you should use, or could use, I should say. And I take the pickup note, that low F, before the double high E flat. So you could go left, left, and go. I'll do that slow. You could do that. It's a little hard because you do have a quick left, left to go up to the top. If you're not comfortable with that, you can add in a double right. The only thing is I really try to avoid doubles in my playing. I also try to avoid crossovers. Those are my two kind of cardinal sins when I'm on timpani. I really try to avoid those if I can. But if I need to, if I find that left left is too hard and I'm missing one drum or missing the other, I might consider just really focusing on making sure that double is is nice and clear, and then I'm not getting where the second note's not being heard. In that case, it would look like this. So watch out for the sticking there. Use what you're most comfortable with, and maybe just try both of them until you like one over the other. That's all I got. Now, hopefully, everybody can rock and roll on the ATSSB Year A Etudes. What do you got for me, Gilbert? I don't hear you, buddy.
I was taking notes.
Hey, I like it.
Yeah. The stuff that you're giving out, sir, is on point. It's accurate. It's very helpful. What I'm going to end up doing, of course, this whole stream, this whole clinic will remain so that people can see in its totality. But I'll probably come back and download it and then splice it, the snare section,
Yeah.
mallet section, timpani section. That way they have smaller chunks
Yeah.
to use, or maybe they could.
Definitely.
I know the way I do it is if I'm working on snare, we can be watching the snare, and then
Yeah.
once we get to the timpani, watch the timpani. Yeah,
I like it.
yeah. So, sir, on point, and there was a point that you said I'm gonna try and move quicker, and I was thinking, well, yeah, I see where you're coming from, but you're putting out a lot of information. I kind of like that. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and just as a heads up to everyone out there, I do clinics all over the state and all over the country, obviously, but I do a lot of all-state clinics on the TMEA and the ATSSB. And, I did hit quite a bit of stuff here, but there's still so much more to talk about. So if you're a high school band director or percussion director, please get in touch with me. I'd love to come work with your students and either give this clinic in more detail or work on just one section or hear your students play and see what I can do specifically for them. But I love working on this stuff because it's music, and that's what we all love doing here.
yes, yes. And I feel like right now, at the point that we are with this pandemic, as educators, we need all the help that we can get to try and get our kids back on track. It's yeah, yes. And I'm sure you can see it as well, probably in your studio.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there's nobody has been unaffected. This has been a crazy year and a half, and not in a good way. And but
Yeah.
we're all doing great. I've seen some educators and students do some things that without the pressure of the situation, maybe wouldn't have tried new things. Maybe wouldn't have gotten
Yeah.
recording stuff. Maybe wouldn't have performed here or there or done this virtual event. And so it's not good. Obviously, I'm not saying the pandemic is good, but I do love that the music community is a community of people, of innovators. And when they get handed a lemon, they make lemonade, they make key lime pie, they make lemon,
Yeah.
sherbet. They're making all sorts of lemon stuff or whatever.
Get
But
creative. Yes.
that's the amazing thing about this field that we're in, and I love it. And I'm trying to do the same thing myself. As
Yes.
like this podcast, this wasn't
Yes.
around, and you're innovating. I love it.
Yes. COVID forced us to go virtual,
Yeah.
and there was a big reception. People like it, and we just kept it going, and it's not, it won't stop. Like, you know, um, there's more artists being added, and more artists want to come and do it, and more artists want to come and do it, and and sometimes I was talking to Richie Gahate Garcia earlier today, testing the stream on his end, and he was talking about possibly bring introducing me to other clinicians. This is like, this thing just will not end. That's how we are.
That's the
and
hope.
and, and yes, and a lot of the times people will ask me, like, well, how do you do it to get all these clinicians you're getting all the time? And I'm like, and today that thought crossed my head, is sometimes those clinicians get handed to me, like today.
Yeah.
But it goes along with what you're saying, sir. That's who we are.
Yeah.
And that's what we like to teach. We love to play, and that's why this thing, it keeps what's the word I'm looking for? It just breathes life to itself, and it just won't stop.
Yeah, it just regenerates. It keeps going
E-
more and more.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And we're definitely blessed to have educators like you that are willing to come and wow, yeah, educate us. It's beautiful.
I'm
Um,
happy to.
yes, learned a lot. And one of the things that I've been sharing on my comments when I post things lately, I equate your clinic today, for example, the equivalent to a whole semester in college. If I were to take notes and then circle, take notes of throughout my semester, and then I would come and circle in those notes the main points. That's what you gave us here.
I love it.
You see what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's a whole semester's worth of education. So if we get smart, and if I get smart, I'm gonna be taking notes the way I was, which is that's why I'm doing it,
Yeah.
taking notes, and I'm gonna really try to use them, in the next week, and then
Love it, man.
tomorrow I'm gonna do the same thing with Richie, and uh, you know, can you imagine in 1 week, on a Friday and a Saturday, I got 2 semesters worth of education from world-class educators, world-class educators. Yeah. Yeah, it's mind
Awesome.
blowing what like you said, what COVID has done for us. Not a good thing,
Yeah.
but we won't take no for an answer. Yeah.
We're a passionate group, us musicians. We keep pushing
Yes.
forward.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Well, sir, I don't want to keep you any longer. You have been very gracious with your time and your talents. Any final? Oh, you are going to be coming to the Rio Grande Valley later on, right? We were talking
Yes,
about that.
this
So
is obviously everything this year is always tentative, or everything in the past 2 years has been tentative. But I plan on coming down to the valley probably end of January, and I'd love to hook up with as many band directors and percussion programs as possible. Hopefully Gilbert will kind of help me coordinate a little bit and help me figure out some logistics. But I'd like to come down and play a solo recital, and as well as do some clinics at the same time with some great students down there. I've had the pleasure of being down there the February before last, and it
yeah.
was my first time down there. And I promised myself I was not going to make that mistake anymore. And I plan on getting down there every year from now on.
Yes.
Obviously, COVID kept me down up here from last year, but man,
Yeah.
you guys got amazing talent down. You got awesome
There's some
directors,
beautiful kids
awesome
down here.
people.
Yes.
Such man, it's amazing place to be, and I was really fortunate to just meet. I think I went to about 6 or 7 schools that time, and so that I've only got what, like 300 or 400 more to go to.
Yeah. only, only middle schools and high schools. Yeah.
That's
Yes. Yeah.
right.
So yeah, we're eager to have you here. I know we're gonna be having you in my campus. Really looking forward to it. And whenever, FYI, whoever will watch the replay, catch the replay, be aware of it when I said that date, because I'm gonna really try and do it so that it's open so that other people can come. So,
Awesome.
but then again, you will also be visiting other schools, like you said. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, sir, thank you so much. How can we reach you if we want lessons with you?
Just check out my email is Meyer Meyer, and then B as in boy, E as in Edward at sfasu.edu. And if you have a hard time finding that, just search Brad Meyer and percussion on Google. And if you see a bald guy with a beard, that's me. And click on the link. I guarantee my email will be under any of those links.
Meyer, BE at SFA.
su.edu. So Stephen F. Austin State University. That's just the acronyms for it.
There it is in comments, guys. That's how you can reach him. Well,
All right.
sir, again, thank you so much. You're welcome here anytime. We're at your disposal. So
Well, I love it.
please take us.
Thank you for doing this for the percussion community, Gilbert. You're the man. And thank you to
Thank
anyone
you.
that stuck it out through the clinic. And everybody, good luck on this upcoming season. Hopefully, we can all get out on the field and in the band room and enjoy some music making with live musicians again. So go get
Yes.
it, everyone.
Yes. See you tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow at 12 U.S. Central Time, 12 p.m. Richie Gahate Garcia. Make sure to join us, and you can definitely replay this clinic for your benefit and your students. Thank you.